Welcome to Monday's Mental Mistakes. This week we're looking at probability neglect. Probability neglect is the tendency to ignore probabilities when dealing with uncertainty. That is, rather than attempting to quantify uncertainties, we often just ignore them. Probability neglect makes us more likely to ignore minor unlikely events and assume that likely events will occur. At the same time, we're unlikely to recognise the actual likelihood of major unlikely events and overreact to them. Here's a simple example. Suppose that you are the mayor of a small town near a river. Due to recent floodings of nearby towns, the townsfolk insist that you do something to help protect them. The experts give you 3 proposals. The first is to build a levee beside the river to prevent inundation of the town. The second is to place life rafts at strategic points within the town so that residents can be more easily evacuated. The third proposal is to simply do nothing. Which would you choose to implement? If your first instinct was to go with one of the proposals, then congratulations. You suffer from probability neglect, like the rest of us. Before making any such decision, it is crucial to understand the actual risk of the town flooding. To make any kind of decision without even a rudimentary sense of the likelihood of the town flooding is to fall into probability neglect. Of course, there's plenty of other factors that should be considered, and in some situations we may have to make a decision without the information that we would prefer to have. But to not even attempt to evaluate the likelihood of an outcome is to neglect probabilities. The principal way to counter probability neglect is to always insist on assigning probability values when dealing with uncertainty. That is, always ask yourself, how likely is this to actually occur? This need not be answered with precise numerical probabilities, but even a more vague classification into not likely or very likely forces us to recognize the importance of probabilities. Another way of improving our intuition about probabilities is to try framing them as percentages, gambling odds, or once in a whatever estimates. So it may be hard to directly estimate the probability that our town will be flooded, but it may be more intuitive to think of it as a once every 10 years versus once every 100 years event. As with all cognitive biases, more and better information is important in reducing their strength. Probabilities are, at heart, based on numbers of occurrences. So while our tendency to neglect probabilities will lead us to overestimate the danger that terrorists pose to us, actual statistics will correct this. The fact that you are more likely to be hit by lightning than die in a terrorist attack in Western countries suggests that it's only by neglecting the actual probabilities that we can consider terrorism as a significant direct threat to our lives. That's not to say that we, as a society, shouldn't do something about it, but rather we tend to be more concerned about it than its actual likelihood would warrant. People are notoriously bad at estimating probabilities, and this means that in many areas of our life we are prone to making bad decisions. For example, most of us will take out car or house insurance, but very few of us will have life insurance. While there may be genuine reasons for this, most of us haven't actually considered the probabilities involved and have not made a well-reasoned decision. Another area in which we tend to ignore probabilities is when taking small risks while driving. Many of us frequently take actions while driving that cause small increases in our risk of accident, like using our phones or speeding. But because the increase in risk is small, we tend to dismiss it as negligible. This is neglecting the probabilities. Small risks can add up, but it generally takes well-publicised accidents or information campaigns to shift our behaviour. In conclusion, probability neglect is the tendency to ignore probabilities when dealing with uncertainty. Until next time, may your mental mistakes be minor.